Welcome back to Living the American Dream, a year abroad. The podcast where I share my experiences as an exchange student in America. In my first episode, I talked about my student exchange itself and the challenges I had to face while being in the US. Today I want to talk about the American high school I went to. Let's dive right into it. First, I need to talk about the structure, since it's very different to Germany. In the US, schools are divided into elementary school, which is kindergarten until 5th or 6th grade. Next up is middle school, which are 6th or 7th to 8th grade. And after that comes high school, which combines students of grade 9 through 12. This is also the last stop before going to college. Now that you know about the structure of the school system, let's talk about credits. Within high school and college, you have to earn a specific amount of credits. You earn credits by completing a class over a specific time. A year-long class typically equals to 1 credit, while a semester-long class equals to only 0.5 credits. Every student needs to earn a specific number of credits in order to graduate. Next up, I want to talk about how to earn credits. It's really simple, just attend your classes, right? Well, not exactly. First, you have to choose among required core subjects, a lot of different electives and AP classes. Then you not only have to attend, but also pass the class. To do so, you have to finish a class with a D or higher. But what's this? A, D? Yes, you heard me right. The American school system gives out grades from A to F, leaving out the E for some reason. Now, earlier I was talking about core classes, electives and AP classes. But what even are those? Well, let me explain. Core classes are classes that you have to take. Examples for core classes at my school are math and English. Electives are classes that students choose based on their interests. Some examples which I chose were photography, graphic design and weights. Electives provide an opportunity to explore your own hobbies and interests and are often a lot more fun because you can choose for yourself which ones you want to do. I should also mention that there are some classes which have prerequisites. This means that you may have to complete other classes first or even take a test in order to join this class. Then there's AP classes. Those allow students to earn both high school and college credits. They're designed to challenge students and provide college level learning. Two examples for AP classes are AP Biology and AP History. As you can see, there's a lot of different classes that can be a lot of work but also a lot of fun. Making friends can be a bit tricky at first. American high schools often have so-called cliques at their school, like athletes, drama kids, band members and more. But after some time you will eventually join one or even more of those cliques, since most students are curious and welcoming, especially to exchange students. Another thing I didn't talk about earlier is the fact that you have the same classes every day. You don't get a schedule for a whole week, it's the same classes every day. This can be tiring if you're used to, for example, the German school system, but it didn't bother me personally. Also, don't worry if you choose a class that you end up not liking, then you can still change to a different one. At the start of the semester you can always change your classes, and as an exchange student I even had the option to change classes after the first half of the semester was already over. I also want to talk about the people in your class. In Germany you usually attend your classes with the same people. In the US it's way different though. You have different people in every class you attend, and if you're lucky then you can have some classes at the same time your friends have them. But there's no guarantee for that. One thing I did before the start of my second semester was to talk to my friends and ask them what classes they're planning on taking next semester. Then I would try to match my schedule with theirs, but that also doesn't always work, since a lot of people want to match up their schedules. I personally think that it's a good thing to always have different students in your class. Since there's so many out of 4 different grades, you get to meet a lot of new people. That way you can make a lot of friends and also get more social in general. Okay, now let's talk about something that definitely plays a major role in school life: activities. Almost every student is doing something either before or after school. Activities are fun, there are plenty to choose from and connect you with a ton of people. There are activities like the drama club, which my host sister was in, or band, which a lot of my friends were in, or sports like basketball, volleyball, tennis, golf, football, soccer or javelin. There's a ton of activities that you can do, and if you ever do an exchange year, then I really recommend you to do at least one. If possible, try out as many as you can. I first tried out basketball because even back in Germany I liked it a lot, and since I was tall I thought to myself this would be a good fit. Oh, how wrong I was. Yes, I liked it a lot and I had a lot of fun, but you can definitely tell that most of these people have already been playing those sports for a few years. So after realizing that I wasn't a good addition to the team, I was thinking about what to try next. Obviously my hostess invited me to drama, but that just wasn't my thing. Another friend invited me to tennis, but that just wasn't it either. I wanted to do something that I couldn't easily do in Germany, something unique. And then a friend of mine invited me to throw the javelin. For those of you who don't know what that is, you basically throw a javelin or spear as far as in the straight as possible. That's it. Well, not really. There's a ton of technique behind it, so you can throw straight and also don't hurt yourself while throwing. And I wasn't sure at first if I wanted to do it, but more friends of mine invited me, and yeah, my host family encouraged me to do it, so I tried it out. After the first string was over, I knew that I wanted to continue doing this. The people were nice and the trainer knew how to teach, so I continued throwing the jab for the rest of the year. But with joining a club or doing a sport comes not only fun, but also responsibility. We usually had training after school from 3:20 until sometimes 6. Sometimes we also trained before school as early as 6 in the morning. We also trained on the weekends sometimes, and obviously there were also tournaments. Since I wasn't the best at throwing the javelin, there was no chance for me to throw against schools out of state, but we often had tournaments against other schools in South Dakota. I didn't do incredibly well, but I definitely saw myself improving over the year. So, to end this whole activities topic, I just want to say again that those activities in sports and clubs are a huge thing in the US. Especially at school, wins get hugely celebrated and they even have posters with a picture of the athlete of the month or athlete of the week hanging around school. I think it's very cool, and especially here in Germany this should be more encouraged and students should be given more opportunities to do sports or other activities. Okay, so I know you think this is obvious, but rules and regulations also exist at American schools. And I'm warning you right now, some of these might sound ridiculous to us, but when living there they all, or at least most of them, make sense. Let's start with something that we also have in Germany, fire drills. We had those at school around 3 times in 1 year, and they were also combined with so-called ALICE drills. ALICE stands for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate. And those drills are done in school to ensure that every student knows what to do in case of an intruder or active shooter entering school. One time we had an ALICE drill and my friend needed to barricade himself in his classroom while almost all the other classes had to evacuate the building. You might ask me why, and I can easily explain this to you. It was simply because the drills always have a made up location of where the intruder is at. If that location happens to be near your classroom, then instead of evacuating, you have to barricade yourself in the classroom. Next up, I want to talk about the school IDs that I mentioned earlier. You need them to get food, but also to get into the school. They're also sometimes used to get into certain areas of the school building, and the security at school also uses them to identify students when they break rules. Now you already heard 2 new things. Get into school, security. Okay, so after the bell rings and school starts, the whole building closes and only opens during lunchtime and after school. So all entrances are locked. How do you get inside if you're late though? Well, all you have to do is enter through the main entrance by showing your ID to a camera. Behind that camera sits the security. I think my school had around 5 or 6 security guards who all wore a blue uniform and were armed with a gun and I think even handcuffs. Now, you might think that this is a bit too much for school, but you also have to understand the general rules of South Dakota. Carrying a firearm is not only legal, it's also easy to get one. There have been shootings at school and there should be security at every school for the safety of the students. But, you know, that's just my opinion. Okay, so another rule I want to talk about are hall passes. It's really simple. If you want to leave the classroom, then you have to ask the teacher, grab a hall pass, and only then can you leave the classroom. If you go outside the classroom without one, you can get into big trouble when the security finds out you don't have one. They will go up to you and ask you to show them your hall pass and student ID so they know who you are and what you're up to. It sounds strict, but it makes sense if you think about all the school shootings that have happened in the US. Now, let's talk about if you're sick or hurt yourself and want to go home. First, you get sent to a nurse. Every school has a nurse who will take care of you. You can come to them with all kinds of problems, and they usually can help you with almost everything. It's really nice. Also, if you need to take any medication, then only the school nurse is allowed to give it to you. You also can't bring your own medication from home without telling the nurse. The last rules that I want to talk about really surprised me. The first one is that any kind of signs that could be gang related are banned, and you could get into big trouble for showing them around school. The second one is that in the lunchroom only plastic forks and spoons are allowed. No metal and no knives. This is reasonable since even only in the time I was there, 2 fights broke out in the lunchroom. Speaking of rules and systems, let's talk about something just as important. How classes are structured and how grades work in the US. You might recall me mentioning grades that range from A to F earlier in this episode, but I didn't really go into detail about that. So let me explain. Every single homework, test or project is graded, and there's always a certain number of points that you have to reach in order to get a certain grade. For example, the teacher gives you homework with a total of 20 points. You would now have to get 90 to 100% of those points for an A, 80 to 89% for B, 70 to 79% for a C, 60 to 69% for a D, and everything below that would get you an F. This is how grading works in the US. With a lot of different homework, tests and projects, the difficulty of passing your class can vary a lot. Okay, now having explained all that boring grading stuff, let's talk about the classes themselves and how they're different to Germany. Let me start this topic out by saying that this is entirely my own opinion based off of my own experiences. I only had fun classes in the US and I usually had a nice teacher. If you visit US, you might also have different negative experiences. You could, for example, have a bad teacher or have bullies in your class. It's a hard topic to talk about since it differs for every student at every school in every country. That being said, let's talk about the class now. For me, all of my classes were fun and every day I was excited to go to school. With every homework giving you points and grades, it's really easy to get a good GPA. In addition, with so many people at one school, you make so many friends, so not a single day is boring. There's always something happening. The classes were often decent sized, with around 20 to max 25 students in one class. The teachers were often much nicer than in Germany and they wanted us to understand and succeed. The student-teacher relationship was also much closer. I felt comfortable talking to my teachers and they were sharing a lot about their personal lives. Talking about personal life, I think it's interesting that every time a new semester begins, the teachers are taking an entire class just to introduce themselves and get to know you. Another positive thing is that you have the same classes every day, so you learn a ton and the teachers are able to fit a lot of cool projects into their classes. A good example is a big role play that we did in history, where we had to pick a famous person from around the 1900s and then defend those person's viewpoints. We were even dressing up as those people and having big debates about different topics. Then we also had a lot of other small projects, like a ton of presentations and group projects. We also had a project in English class where a friend of mine made perfume in class. So a lot of interesting projects that were a ton of fun. Then there were those classes that were entirely made up of projects, like photography. We worked with many different cameras and had to develop pictures or make little stop motion movies. Editing pictures was also part of the class. To be honest, photography didn't feel like a class, but more like a hobby I just did every day in last period. Earlier you also heard me say the word GPA. This stands for grade point average. You might wonder what that is, and to keep it short, it basically says how good of a student you are. Your GPA can range from 0, which is the worst, to 4, which is the best. You can also reach a GPA of 5, but that's only if you take some advanced level classes. So to explain a bit further, a GPA of 4 is straight A's and a GPA of 0 is straight F's. But don't worry, if you ever do an exchange year, then don't aim for 4.0. The average GPA in the US is 3, so don't stress out. Focus more on the social aspects of your exchange. Now, let's talk about the fun stuff, school events. I don't want to talk too much about this, but homecoming, prom, Halloween and Spirit Week are huge events. Halloween in particular was celebrated a lot bigger than in Germany. I really want to talk about Spirit Week a bit more since it's something we don't have in Germany. Spirit Week is just a week in which every day has a different theme. For example, Golf Day, so everybody dresses up as a golfer. We also had a Pink Out or Barbie Day, where everybody had to wear pink or dress up as somebody from Barbie. Then there's the School Colors Day, where everybody needed to wear blue in my case. As you can imagine, it's a lot of fun, especially because everybody is participating in it and everybody has a lot of fun. Then there's also the two big dances. One at the start of the year, homecoming, where you celebrate being back at school, and then there's prom, which is the final dance of the 12th graders before graduation. While there's so many positive things I can talk about, being an exchange student also comes with challenges. I already talked about some in my first episode, and the challenges don't stop when it comes to being at school. There definitely aren't a lot of challenges and they're often easy to resolve, but there are some that might trouble you a bit more if you do an exchange year. While being an exchange student from Germany, I had a lot of students making jokes or nagging me about my home country's past or my home country in general. I think you all know in what direction those jokes were going. Anyways, for me this wasn't a big deal, and usually just ignoring it or talking with them on a serious note did the job. Another big challenge was actively participating in class, especially when doing group projects or debates. It was a challenge because my English was lacking and I wasn't confident in talking to people yet, but with some time this problem also resolved itself. And that's about it when it comes to challenges that are specifically related to a student exchange. Obviously there are also some other general challenges that you might face, like not getting along with people or whatever, but this happens all around the world and I don't think that those fit the topic of this podcast. And with that, we have come to the end of the second episode. We covered just about everything surrounding school, like rules and making friends, and I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for tuning in to Living the American Dream, a year abroad. See you next time when we'll talk about the American life, everything outside of school.